president of the European Research Council, which is one of the programs of the European Union to support research and innovation. It's a quite large program. Just to give you an idea, we fund about more than 1,000 projects per year, a completely bottom-up initiative of researchers, and the budget is over 2 billion euro a year, so it's a significant program. And for me, I mean, a meeting like this one is a great opportunity to meet many people having similar duties, namely to fund research in very different settings, because depending on the size of your program, depending on the level of freedom you have to set up things, things are very different, because in some cases a lot of pressure is exerted on the funding agencies to do what they are supposed to do, and in our case we have a fantastic freedom. Our budget is determined 7 years ahead, so it's very comfortable in the sense we know how much money we will have, and we are completely free of choosing the best possible projects, so there is no pressure of this. So a meeting like this, of course, there are people from many different continents, many different countries, many different settings. And of course, after some time you know some of the people, so it becomes almost like a friends meeting, but each time there are new people. So from that point of view, that's great, and the importance, the relevance of, I think, GRCs is growing, because a number of issues that the funding agencies and scientists are facing in the world today are very similar. I mean, for scientists, of course, the generalization of fake news is a disaster, and because of course, what scientists do is a different business, and of course, to be heard in this kind of a world in which there is so much noise and not real information is difficult. A number of issues concerning, of course, ethics and are becoming more and more important. And altogether, another dimension which is very, very important is to manage to relate to the people, to the population, to explain what science can do and cannot do. I think it's very important to also show the limits of science. And so therefore you have to find good ways of relating to people. How can you tell your stories? And how can you make them understood by people, but at the same time, how can you motivate the next generation? Because I think it's decisive for science to go on, to really attract some of the very best minds and very motivated people. You cannot do science without passion. So I think that's something very, very important. And from that point of view, if you look at this communication dimension, which of course is a part of the activity, if you want to relate to people, I think it's very important that funding agencies show some creativity. That is, they are willing to explore new ways, because depending which group of people you want to address, you have to use different tools. Of course, traditionally there were articles, there were just newspapers, they were just, which are fine. I mean, I'm an old man, so that's my normal way of doing things. But today you have radio, you have television. Personally, I like radio a lot, because I think it has a certain length of communication, which television tends to be so short that it's very difficult to communicate something in depth, but maybe because I'm not good at that, but that's another issue. But one thing we did at ERC, we just made an open call for proposal to communicate about some of the results we have. We have our portfolio now is about 9,000 research projects, a very significant number. And one of the proposals we received was so-called ERC comics, that is web comics, which really would be designed by, of course, professional people doing comics, and meeting the scientists, working together for some time and producing a web comic. In the end, actually, to be part of these festivals where you have all comics shown, you have to print them. So actually we did print some comics, which was not our intention initially. We really thought about the web. But the great surprise has been that these comics have been fantastically successful. Everybody wants to have a copy, and of course in our minds we didn't think of a copy. We thought just people going to the web and looking at them. So it shows that if you come up with new ideas, new format, new ways of looking at things, you can definitely maybe attract a different group of people. I'm sure for the younger generation this is more appealing than just opening a newspaper and reading an article. But the other point I want to make, which I think for me is very, very important, we realized that for almost half the projects which have been finished now, so the webcomics exist, the artist, the man or the woman who were doing the drawings, and the scientists continue to work together. And I like that very much, because there are two kinds of creativity which come together for this. And I'm sure it will provide some other things later on. So just to show that we should not limit ourselves to just the usual media, which is look for possibilities and new ways of communicating with people.